Will Griffith is here for his victory lap. Go ahead, Will. Will Griffith at the Kings Herald. Just rip the Band-Aid off. You were right.
Man.
No, I'm not doing it.
You were right. We were wrong.
I refuse. I'm never going to put a fan down for being excited for his team. And boy, howdy, that summer league championship and all those Twitter clips of everybody high-fiving each other during the preseason, they got you guys hyped up. And now we're here. And now we're here again. So I'm glad you guys are excited, because if you guys weren't excited, I wouldn't be here. I'd have quit 100 years ago. So go ahead. No,
we were excited. Past tense. And it wasn't the summer league, man. It wasn't high fives. Like we thought. I mean, Kenny, I'll own it. I genuinely thought the team was good. I thought the roster was good.
Yeah, I thought it was solid.
Especially for what we were asking. like we were naive to what we were asking for. I thought the roster was good enough for that.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. I think they're still good enough. This is the hard part about listening to you guys every day as a generally grumpy person about this team. You guys had me believe in those first 10 games that I might be the dumbest person in Sacramento. I mean, I watch you guys most days and I bought into the hype and I went, well, I was writing positive previews. I was getting out there going like, all right, I might have to go on the Kings Herald show and make some apologies. I might have to do the rounds and shake hands and kiss babies and say, I am so sorry for what I did. It didn't work out that way, but we got a lot of season left.
Yeah, you don't have to do it right now, and I don't see it coming anytime soon. Will, I just look at this group of guys, and I talk about the core of this team, this group that's been together for the most part for the last 2 to 4 years. Rashawn Holmes, Harrison Barnes, Tyrese Halliburton, Buddy Hield, and De'Aaron Fox, and I just don't see it from these guys. I don't see any scenario where they can band together and dig deep enough to change the fortunes of what's gone on so far this season.
I think you're right to a certain extent. I think we've seen the run from our current core with Harrison Barnes, and like this current group isn't working together. I think it's time to sell, to make a change that way, to ship somebody off, whether that be Buddy Hield or Marvin, like you've talked about, whether that's seeing if you can swap De'Aaron, which is something that I would prefer not to do. I think that De'Aaron has the ability to bounce back in the second half of the season. But there needs to be a change on the roster, and somebody has to be brought in that can at least handle the share of some sort of responsibility, whether that's a leadership responsibility in the locker room, whether that's being the guy on the court. Something's got to change because everybody here is passive. Every single person on this team is passive in one regard or another. And it's not working. It is not working at all.
It's it's interesting, Will and KC. You brought up, you would rather not move on from De'Aaron. You'd rather not swap De'Aaron right now, and it's what this is the first down season he's had.
Yeah,
you know what I mean, and admittedly, it is coming at the worst possible time. Like it appears everything else is bad. The coach is fired, and our expectations were really high. And oh, by the way, that new contract just kicked in, so it couldn't have hit him at the worst possible time. But in 5 years, and this isn't it's not an awful stretch of basketball that he's playing. It's just he's not living up to the expectations that we put out for him. And that, goes back to what Kenny and I were talking about. Maybe that's our fault.
I think that was the problem entering the season, is that the Kings always seem to set it up where you have to knock every single pin down to get any sort of victory out of this team. If De'Aaron Fox can make one more jump, if everyone can stay healthy, if Harrison Barnes can continue to average 25 points a game, if Davion Mitchell can play like a rookie of the year candidate, then we can get the 8th seed. And like, to me, that's one of those things that it's like, something's going to go wrong somewhere along the way. And unfortunately this year it's De'Aaron. Now regression is going to happen at some point or another. I don't think he's had a good 3-point shooting year since his sophomore campaign. It's looking more and more like an anomaly every game that passes. But nobody expected a regression like this. Like, I could see him dropping in points. I could see him not living up to how he was playing before he got COVID at the end of the year. But this feels different, right? I worry sometimes that this is an off the court thing, or that whether Monty walked up to him and said, "Hey, we're trying to swap you. You know, I'm committed to Tyrese, I'm committed to Davion, and you're going to be the odd man out. You're my Kevin Martin, and I'm trying to go get a James Harden." But whatever it is, his personality, I feel like, has changed even as much as his stuff on the court has.
Yeah, I've said numerous times, I look at him, and he was great last year, but I don't see the same type of player that I saw from his freshman year in Kentucky to the second year in the NBA. Like, it's just a different style of play. It's a different level of intensity night in and night out. And it's like you just mentioned, it's just continuously and constantly passive. And he's supposed to be a leader on and off the court, mostly on the court. That's really my concern. Like, on the court, he's supposed to bring these guys home. But he's been far from that this year. And like you said, the shooting, I don't ever see that developing. I just don't.
Yeah, I mean, we see late in somebody's career. I feel like Jason Kidd is something that I've seen fans point to, like, well, if Jason Kidd could do it, De'Aaron Fox could do it. But like, Jason Kidd is also a Hall of Fame talent that, you know, it's different. He played with fire and passion for years and years and years before he became a good 3-point shooter. Fox
and real quick, not to cut you off, Will.
No.
When people talk about Jason Kidd, by the time he was shooting like that, he was averaging 10 points a game.
Yeah.
Like, we're not sitting here saying, well, he can turn into Jason Kidd and
let's wait till he turns 33.
Like, no, that's number one.
So,
Let's go, guys. Only 10 more years.
What were we talking about? What were we on?
A quarter-century playoff drought.
Yeah, we're just talking about how the shooting doesn't look like it's ever going to come.
No, I don't think it's going to come at this point. I don't necessarily subscribe to you push pretty far today, Kenny, by saying that we lost the Ja Morant debate. I think we're losing. I think we're down 30 in that halftime, maybe. I think there's still an opportunity for Fox to come back and take that, because they're still both incredibly young. We don't know where injury history is going to tie into this. We don't know what personnel decisions Memphis makes that might tie Ja up too. But I think you're right that, like, at this point, Ja Morant is playing fantastic, and he's got the Memphis Grizzlies rolling, and De'Aaron Fox in a season where he's being paid hundreds of millions of dollars to, if not lead off the court, at least be the leader, be the guy on it. Mm-hmm. I don't think he's doing either. And I think he's kind of pushing responsibility elsewhere even.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it kind of, I'm with that. And I'm with you in the sense that it feels like De'Aaron's personality changed. I do want to point out one thing that's, I guess it's sort of funny as we talk about Ja Morant, and I guess it plays into our expectations. The Grizzlies are 9-8. Dude, they're 9-8. Mm-hmm. That's like, and hey, that's good for them. It's 9-8. They're not 15-2.
Oh, you're right on that.
They're not 14-3. Like we when they're 9-8. That's all we wanted. We take 8-9. It's all we wanted, and couldn't get it.
Yeah,
incredible.
I mean, if we were sitting at 9-8 right now, would you not be saying the Kings are rolling? That the Kings have got it. This is the season. Almost 20 games into the season, we are the 6th seed in the playoffs. We're ahead of the Lakers. We're ahead of the Nuggets. We're the shit this season. I apologize, Jesse, if you have to believe that.
Jesse got it. Jesse's warming up, man. He's good. He knows what it is.
We're excited about this team. I apologize. I should not have gotten so excited about a what if scenario.
You know what's worse about all of that? All they needed to do was handle business on their road trip.
Absolutely.
They handle business on their road trip. They're 9-8. Or they're 9 in math. Well, maybe they're 9 in
2 games over, right?
Maybe they're 9-9, something like that. But their point is they're right there. It's everything else exactly the same, but the road trip is what it should have been. They're 9-9.
Yeah, don't lose to the Thunder, don't lose to the Spurs, and don't give up against the Pacers. And you're right there for it. And
amazing.
That's where, to me, I'm like, this team's rolling right now, but they're also still not too far off. Like I was negative about them in the offseason, but like right now, like I would give Alvin Gentry 10 games before I finally like write the season off. It's done. Let's start looking at draft picks because there is a chance Fox pulls this out. I can squint and see Tyrese Halliburton suddenly realizing like, oh, I guess I can't score 0 points in an NBA game and expect us to win. With my mom sitting courtside with the flowers and I've scribbled something on my shoes. I'm going to go out there and score 0 points for her. But like, I can see them realizing Mo Harkless ain't the man either. And at least turning around to play just under sub 500 basketball. That's the hope.
Did they look any different to you last night in the first game with Alvin Gentry?
They look slower. Shout out to Rory. I think I saw it on Twitter and I saw him comment today. They played their slowest game. They played their slowest game of the year last year or this year. They played their slowest game of the season last night.
Wow.
And I think the rotations were a little bit better. I think seeing Tristan Thompson and Alex Len play in the same game was one of those things that people went, hold on a second here. Like we've been so conditioned to expect the one thing or another. It was like, oh wait, this is a new coach.
It's like, oh no, no one told Alvin. Alvin, you can't do this. Something's gonna happen. You can't do this.
I think there was a little bit more of either Tyrese or Fox were on the court for most of the game, which I thought was which was an improvement. But this is the same team. The fourth quarter was terrible. They were in it. I even saw people tweeting, "Oh, this game is fun," and they're playing the second and third string of the Sixers, and like our expectations are so incredibly low that we're like, "Yay, we're keeping up with this B minus bench team," but this is the same team. I didn't see that much different, but it is one game from Alvin, so I'll give him 10 games before I finally go. Let's talk about what we need to talk about here.
Will Griffith of the Kings Herald with us here. Will the boss Griffith with us on D-Lo and KC. What you mentioned, Tyrese. What's going on with Tyrese? It feels off.
I feel like this is his personality a little bit. I feel like he is a giving person. I feel like he is one of those guys that will defer. He likes getting those assists, and I feel like in some way he wants Fox back to where he is. And so some of that in his mind maybe is, well, if I don't take as many shots, if I can be secondary and force Fox to shoot, then maybe that'll spark, De'Aaron, and we'll get back to our not winning ways, but get back to our, competitive ways. And it's certainly not working, but I know they talked about last night on the broadcast that it almost seems like he would much prefer to just pick off assists all day, just sit there and collect assists and not have to shoot until the time is right. But if the Kings want to be anything in the next 5 or 6 years, he needs to be averaging 16 to 20. Like he can not 10, not 13 or 14 with 6 or 7 assists. He needs to be the guy or the second guy for the Kings to be in 8th spot. And I just assume it's his personality at this point.
And to go along with that personality, in my opinion, I don't think De'Aaron Fox has the personality, and it's not in his DNA to shoot 20 times a night. Like, I think if he could have it his way, he'd shoot 9 to 11 times a night, kind of, float in and out, where other guys on his team can pick up the scoring load, and he can just kind of distribute here and there. Not even really like distribute to have like 15 assists, just kind of orchestrate. Oh, I'm gonna move the ball over here. And that's your starting backcourt. It's not enough. It's not good enough. And that leads back to me saying like these guys got to move on from these guys. Maybe not all 5 of those guys, but at least like 2 or 3 of them.
They have to move on from the assumption that De'Aaron Fox is a 1A guy on this team. I think you guys talked about that. Like, we assume that he's a Batman when he's probably a Robin. And like, okay, so then how are you getting Batman to Sacramento? You aren't signing him in free agency. So it's going to be a trade or it's going to be a draft. It's going to be somebody in the draft. So we're talking about either overhauling the roster, like Kenny says, which will involve either Tyrese Halliburton, Davion Mitchell. Like, we can't keep all of our favorites and send our trash out for a star. So somebody's going to have to take, they're going to have to bite the bitter pill here, or it's going to be, you're going to have to tank, and you're going to have to tank very hard. You're going to have to commit, you're going to have to commit murder with some of these guys. You're going to have to sit some of these people in order to to get low enough to where you can have a chance at a star. This is a deep draft this year, but you're not getting a game changer like Banchero or Duran or something like that without slamming on the brakes, pulling the e-brake, and going off the cliff.
Tanking work?
Yes and no. As somebody who's a proponent of it, I think that it won't work in Sacramento if you're trying to pull what Philly did. What Philly tried to do with a trust the process style, like 5 or 6 years, it just won't work in Sacramento. It just is not feasible because
You'll
of the
lose your
length
fan
of
base.
it. We've already killed our fan base after 15 years. When I got really chatty about tanking was as soon as COVID hit, because we knew fans weren't going to be in the stands for at least a season and a half or 2 seasons. So it's like, okay, here's your mini tank. You don't have to worry about anyone being in the stands anyways. You don't have to worry about ticket sales. So play the youth to the next year, rebound with 2 high draft picks and then get started again. By the time people come back in the arena, you have a young team, you have a team that's driven, you hopefully have a star somewhere in there in the making and go from there. Now that's something that Monty McNair didn't do. I accept that. The Kings never do what I want them to do. And as a Kings fan, you just have to accept, like, yeah, I think this would be the smart thing for them to do. And then accept that they're going to do something completely off the wall stupid. It's not stupid necessarily that Monty didn't go that route, because you need money in order to run your franchise. And that playoff money is tantalizing. You've got a fan base that's nearly an active revolt. I can understand why the pressure is to, hey, let's build here and build quickly. But I feel like it's a little short-sighted.
The other thing about tanking, like, I was never a proponent of tanking with De'Aaron Fox, right? That didn't make sense to me. Like, this guy's going into his 5th season. If you're trying to tank with this guy, you got bigger problems on your hand than just trying to get, this high pick. You got a guy that isn't that guy. Turns out he might not be that guy. But when I look at tanking now, like, you're moving all these guys anyway. You know what I'm saying? Like, there's not a guy outside of maybe, if you're lucky, Halliburton and Davion that you're going to keep around. Those are young players in the league anyway. All right. If you want to move on and get, a top 10 pick from somebody, go ahead, make the move. You know what I'm saying? Like, because this little structure that they got, this needs to be torn down. And if you can rebuild that real quick with like a Brandon Ingram, cool, that's great. But if you can't, and you can only take like somebody's first round unprotected, you have to look at it. I'm not even a big tanking guy, but you have to consider it.
You have to at least consider it. I think Memphis is a good model for what I was more considering the last couple of years, where they dropped out of the playoffs. They picked up, Jaren Jackson Jr., they picked up John Morant, and then all of a sudden they were 10th, then they were 8th. It was a pretty quick turnaround, and they're not necessarily the most efficient franchise in terms of, like, they haven't made it yet necessarily, but like, we would be begging for Memphis right now, as we've already talked about. Like, if you had a guy like John Morant and a guy like Jaren Jackson Jr., we'd be hyped as hell, even if it was just aiming for a 10th spot.
Yeah.
Oh. You still think with 60 some odd games left that this thing could be turned around a little bit and they could get back to competing? I mean, they're already 2.5 games out of the 10th spot right now with Minnesota going through one of those stretches where they're playing well.
Yeah, I think that the reason why I think that there's hope for the Kings here, if there's anything at all, is that I think OKC wants, I think they want one more year where they tank for somebody big. I think they've got a nice little collection of young guys, but I think they're looking for their 1A guy as well. Now I think Shea is maybe a 1B. He could be a 1A, but I think he's kind of De'Aaron Foxy a little bit in that regard. I think he's better than Fox at this point, but the Thunder are going to drop out for one more season, I feel like. And the Timberwolves, I never trust the Timberwolves. I mean, they're kind of my second. I always like to look over there and see how they're doing, because we're the 2 poverty franchises in the NBA, if there are 2.
Ant-Man, though. Good.
Oh, yeah.
Gracious.
But yeah, if you're going to put our roster up against theirs, they've got a better roster. Yeah. And if you're going to put our coach up against theirs, I think they have a better coach. It's just a matter of, does Minnesota find a way to fumble the bag late in the season, and can the Kings keep pace at this point?
All right. Well, look, we got what 60 games left, right? Yeah. We'll talk to you before then, but as of right now, what do you want to see from the rest of the season? Is it purely like, oh no, we're still trying to make this playoffs, or do you want to see some kind of development, Davion's development, Tyrese development? Like what do you want to see out of the rest of the season besides, some type of playoff run?
I want to see at least some sort of consistency. I want, like, Monte McNair chose his path. I feel like he still has room to operate, but he chose his path. He's trying to get to the playoffs this year. Okay, so then go for it. Commit to it. It might be the wrong choice in my mind, but commit to it. Go get a star. And whatever that takes, go get it. And if he doesn't, if you push it to the All-Star break, you push a little bit further, and if you can get within sniffing distance of 8 through 10, then go all the way. If you can't, then hit the button and blow it to hell. Mm-hmm. If we're going to be sitting here at 12, okay, go see if you can get a top 4 pick this year. Go see if you can get some game-changing talent that De'Aaron can operate around, where he doesn't have to be the leader of this team. Because if they'd have done it any time in the last couple of years, we wouldn't be in this mess. We'd already been on the way up rather than still sinking to the bottom. But commit in one way and then go for it. I'd like to see Tyrese Halliburton start to shoot and start to realize, like, he could be the alpha on this team. Mm-hmm. He could be the 1A guy for this particular brand of Kings basketball. I'd like to see Davion Mitchell, do something on the offensive end consistently, because as advertised as he's been on defense, his offense is so inconsistent that he's not the MVP of this team outside of De'Aaron Fox, as you guys talked about at the beginning of this year. I don't think he quite reached that level. But I'd like to see at least those two guys, because those are the core guys. I think Halliburton and Davion Mitchell at this point are kind of Fox and Holmes included in that to a lesser extent. I think those are your two core guys. I think if Monte McNair has to choose, I think he's sending away Fox before he sends away Mitchell. And I think he sends away everybody else before he sends away Holmes or Halliburton.
What's Jerry think about all this?
Good-natured
about it all.
Jerry is.
Oh,
did you mute yourself?
Oh, that's weird. I apologize.
That's a go, Will.
Jerry's an NBA fan at this point as much as he is a Kings fan.
Yeah.
So me and him talk quite a bit about it, and it's one of those things that he thinks that it starts at the top, that you have to have accountability all the way through, but it's also nothing that he didn't expect either. Mm-hmm. He isn't quite as grumpy as I can be about it in terms of, like, being aggressive with certain things, but I think he certainly is. He's as fed up as we are, as the fans are, about it. He's just a much nicer person about it.
Well, great stuff, man. We love the podcast with you, Tony, and Jerry, and all the great work you do over at the Kings Herald, man. Thanks for hanging out with us. Thanks for not gloating too much. You've earned it. You've deserved it here. 18, 19 games in this season, but we appreciate you taking it easy on us.
Hey, I love you guys. I'm not going to beat you up until you say something real stupid. Okay, I promise.
Tune in long enough. It's bound to happen.
Yeah, it will. I'll come for you at some point, but not over this guy. You had hope. That's nothing ever to beat you up over.
That's our man, Will Griffith at the Kings Herald.